That's awesome. Oh, yeah.
Like none other, right?
I think last year, me and Josh did every single one from the from the conference finals onwards. There was maybe I missed one, but me and him did every single one for the rest of the season. Yeah.
All right, good evening. Live before lock. That's right. We have one big playoff game to get to. Atlanta, Milwaukee. We already saw how things went according to, I'm sure, very little people's plans out there. Game one. So we'll see if the expected swing can be back in place for Milwaukee, or just maybe Atlanta can continue to come out there and shock the world across the board from props to DFS. We have you covered up until 8:30 tonight Eastern, so we appreciate you riding with us. We always ask very little of you, right? Hit us up with a like. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and you hit that notification bell because you don't want to miss anything here. I'm Eytan. Rayen's in the house, and you can follow him at, more importantly, Rinpack on Twitter, at Shander Show for me. And it's been a busy week for myself. I'm sure for you as well. Probably different means to the same end, my friend. But it's good to see your face. Good to chat with you tonight, as always, brother.
Right back at you, Eytan. So there's a huge announcement that I get to make on behalf of Eytan. Eytan is a brand new father to a beautiful baby boy. So chat, if you can hit the thumbs up for Eytan, bringing in a new boy to this world. Congratulations, Eytan. I know you'll be a world-class father. And as a beloved Sixers fan you are, I guarantee you little Teddy is already a better shooter than Ben Simmons. So congratulations. And I'm sure you're going to have a flurry of emotions heading your way. But more than anything, congratulations. I'm sure this is going to be a beast of a son you're going to have, and you're going to have a ton of fun raising him.
Wow. Thank you, brother. First and foremost, for the kind words. A lot in there to unpack. First off, let us just say we are not above parading my now 70, no, not even 48, or probably a little longer than that, 72-hour-old child out here for likes, for subscriptions. I'll do anything. All right. Just so you know, family, it doesn't matter. Blood, now immediate family in this case. If we need to parade my newborn child out there for likes and for subscriptions here, we're going to do it. So that's first and foremost. And secondary, yes, this kid, if there's anything he'll be able to do with a basketball, I promise you, first and foremost, it will be able to shoot free throws. Yes, that will be the first thing and main thing that he'll learn. I promise you that.
I bet. I know. And it's like the first league. I can only imagine how that's going for you. Producer Chris was giving you some tips and advice headed your way. So it's going to be a ton of fun. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun yourself being a new father. That's the main point of the show. I mean, we're just going to talk about your son, but there's some important news with Ice Trae and the Hawks just showing up everyone and proving many NBA fans wrong. I've been proven wrong many times by these Hawks over and over again. They crushed every Sixers fan's souls over the past few weeks, and now they're doing the same to the Bucks. And can Ice Trae really continue this? I have no idea, but I'm excited to talk about some single game showdown contests today with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you raise a really good point where right through game 7 in Philadelphia, there was just even like the non-biased, the non-homer feel where, all right, Atlanta did everything they needed to do in this series. They made it a series. It's back in Philadelphia. Let's go. But then you start to look at the track record here for Trae Young, for the Hawks that really have taken on his persona, which we see all the time, right? Where the star leads not only on the floor, but also just this mentality. It happened in New York. It happened in Philadelphia. It's happening in Milwaukee. And like my gut and my heart says, sure, the Bucks are going to come back. It's home, game 2. They're going to even this series. They're going to make it a tough one. But then you look at the Hawks track record, to your point, and especially when you're identifying some top players, which we'll do from a DFS standpoint. We have a couple of great props in here as well, but just kind of looking at it from the overall strategy that you apply all the time, Ryan, in a showdown mode. And tonight, of course, brought to you by Yahoo. So we'll talk a lot about building a Yahoo lineup as well. But I just across the board, I think that the general feel is like, all right, yeah, Milwaukee coming back and evening this out. But I'm not going to be the one that's going to tell everybody to go against Atlanta, to go against Ice Trae, to go against. I saw it up close and personal here, 12 miles away from my house, sir. I'm not going to be the one to get burned again.
I completely feel you. And I've kind of shifted the tide on Trae Young. I was kind of sitting on top of the hill as a Trae Young hater for some time, but he has earned all the respect so far in these playoffs. He has been absolutely sensational. The best part about him is he plays with some swagger, and that swagger has been kind of like contagious among the team, and he plays that villain role, and the whole team's been riding him, and he has been the star of these playoffs, the newborn star in the NBA, and Trae Young deserves it. He has proved me wrong over and over again, and I just hate to continue to feel like I'm hating on him, but these Hawks fans who are telling me I'm wrong, I guess I was wrong, but I still feel like the Bucks are the better team. The one thing the Hawks have going for them, the more and more I've got to watch them throughout these playoffs, outside of Capella, they have some guys who can get just flat out buckets. And it's just like John Collins' evolution with his range has been really impressive, something that I didn't expect to happen. Obviously an athletic freak. He has evolved into a perimeter threat. He had a huge 3 in the final minute of the game last time out. So I do think the Bucks will counteract. Giannis was sensational. There's not much else Giannis can do. But Chris Middleton cannot go the way he did shooting from the outside last time out. And I do expect him to shoot better from the outside out. Jrue Holiday was sensational. But, man, the thing that really stuck out to me was there's like north of $500 million invested in Jrue, Middleton, and Giannis over the next half decade or so. And Pat Connaughton gets to play to proceed to shoot an air ball. I was like, Coach Budenholzer, come on. You just got to get in the crunch time, you just got to put your balls in the best players, in my opinion, and you ended up burning them. Kudos to Trae, 48-point double-double on the road, game 1, stealing that one. He's playing that villain role. It's been a ton of fun to watch, honestly, and just an avid basketball fan like we are.
No, and that's going to be the big thing now is game 2, trying to see for example, with Trae, the obvious, right? How much can he keep this thing going versus strategy and change, adapt, as if it's strategy from coaching standpoint to just on the floor. Is there anything that you apply? And again, it's not just a typical showdown that we deal with in the postseason. We do have the benefit of it being the lone game, but we also have, in this case, at least one game's worth of hindsight for this series, but also, as we talked about, what Atlanta has put together and what Milwaukee has done as well. So do you have a strategy that you may be able to apply? And everything is loose, right? Everything is fluid depending on the variables that we place with the players themselves. But when we start to get into series and we start to look at showdown mode, specifically captain mode here, and we'll talk about FanDuel, Yahoo as well. But when we start to build in this one game, this showdown mode, if you will, is there something that you look at all, even if it's early trends in this early start of a series?
Yeah. So one thing, you can correctly predict what a rotation will look like from one of these coaches who are making adjustments. For example, in the Western Conference Finals yesterday, there was a huge rotational change that we couldn't adjust for. They inserted Terrence Mann in the starting lineup. Going into game one, I was on with Josh, and we had a pretty good hindsight that Bobby Portis was going to re-enter the rotation. We also saw Jeff Teague play a few minutes, for better or for worse. But we also saw on the Hawks side of things, Solomon Hill played significant minutes. And due to Bogdan Bogdanovic's knee injury, that's kind of where he played into it. He played well, and he ended up being the difference in the showdown, being that signature 1K play. And I feel like the field is going to have a lot of recency bias headed his way. We were on the more of the Onyeka Okongwu minutes. That wasn't the case, as they opted to go small without Capel on the floor. And it obviously worked out for them. My thing is, I try to it's really hard to go into a coach's head and predict their rotations, but I try to find little points where do I see a few extra minutes today is Brook Lopez going to play 20 minutes again? Is he going to be more like close to 30? I think, for example, today I fall right in the between 20 and 30 minutes, more like mid 20s potentially. He's going to be super low, and not necessarily that I like him. I'm just trying to see where can I find a little edge in the rotation where the field is not necessarily looking at. That's where our ownership projections come into play, where I can little zig when people are zagging and vice versa. And it's going to all circle back to me looking at the constants in showdown. It's really easy to pinpoint the three studs on Milwaukee. It's Giannis, True, and Middleton. And on Atlanta, it's Trae Young. And then Capella has been kind of showed out in the first game. Is it going to be him again? Is it going to be Collins? Do we think Bogdanovich can be healthy enough to at least close out a game? My inclination is no. It hasn't happened in the last two games in the Philly series. It didn't happen in game one. Who gets those minutes? Is it going to be Solomon Hill again? Can we pivot off of Hill's ownership to that final extended run and who can really show out? And that's really where I think where you can differentiate yourself in showdown.
Awesome. Yeah. And it makes sense, right? Because we saw, talking about Hill, we've seen this with Herter as well, kind of in the last series with Philadelphia, where you could still take advantage from a cost standpoint, but when everybody else is on it, then the secret's kind of out, and you're not fooling anybody if Solomon Hill is going to be, as we see there on our ownership projections, heavily owned for that cheap of a cost, especially on the return there. So just looking overall, you mentioned these guys as far as collectively, Ryan, but just starting kind of where we are at the top. And I did see this on the premium Slack. We've got the super chat going here as well. So I appreciate the shout on the super chat earlier from Double R. Don't subject my son to future Philly sports failures. Congrats on fatherhood. Look, here's what I'll say. Okay. And honestly, Ryan, you could help out on this, right? And look, I've said this countless times. I don't care if somebody has children, if they have nieces, nephews, or if they have a neighbor with kids and they say hi to them every now and again. I'll take any advice I can get when it comes to raising my son. I am not an expert by any means. I've got great people around me, but I am far from an expert. Here's the only thing I can promise, okay? he's going to be an Eagles fan. He will root for the Philadelphia Eagles. Everything else, I will leave up to him. If he wants to root for the stinking Knicks, if he wants to root for the Rangers or whoever the hell else, then that's fine. Chicago, Miami, he will root for the Philadelphia Eagles until he hits that rebellious stage, and I'm sure will bounce to like the Cowboys when he's a teenager, right?
Yeah, it's going to be on you to make sure he stays with that Eagles fandom. Hopefully, by the time he grows up, he gets to see some Eagles glory days come back again. I grew up in the Michigan area, so I
just won a Super Bowl in 2017. Come on, it's not that far off.
That's true. Hey, I grew up in the Michigan area. I grew up kind of rooting for the Lions, and I don't root for them no more, just because it's just a waste of my time. Too much emotional investment.
Fair enough. All right, I did see this was on the premium Slack that Tank Forever is going to fade Trae again. No way it kills him 2 times in a row. I can't honestly, and look, I know we talk about stars and scrubs. We talk about building lineups with some ownership and the ability to bend around that with our tools that we have available for everybody on awesemo.com. We'll tell you all about coming up after Rayen answers about the free tools that you can take advantage of today, especially the NBA Showdown single game ownership projections, as you see, but you don't need to wait once a day, or in this case, a week. You can just jump on for $29.95. We'll tell you everything about that coming up in a second. But, you know, I am curious why, and I understand it. It's like, all right, to be totally contrarian here, but I feel like it's got to, if somebody's going to take that approach, it would have to be with the 3 of Middleton, Holiday, and Capella, because just the nature of the game tonight, outside of foul trouble or injury, I don't know how Trae Young and Giannis don't return at the very least a decent baseline.
I completely agree. They're both very, very safe plays. You expect them to play around 40 minutes. The spread is 8 points, I believe, still. So, yeah, I think if I'm spending up for Giannis. I'm trying to find that extra salary to make sure to pay up for him. I don't think Trae Young and Giannis continue to perform at similar fantasy point levels like we saw in game 1. I do think Giannis is going to separate Trae Young as the series continues a bit more. If we're going to look back at the average at the end of the series, I do think Giannis should be outscoring Trae Young at least by between 5 to 10 points. That's how much better of a Giannis is as a fan that we saw in game 1. He can get going. I don't know how much they can sag off that defense, and Trae Young is going to constantly go to that floater. It's kind of been a dual threat floater. If he's not going to the floater, it's a lob to Collins, a lob to Capella. We'll see what adjustments Budenholzer does in that situation. And that, if they fix that adjustment, and if they're going to fix the way they guard him off of screens, I think Trae Young's floor is a lot lower than Giannis. So that's why Giannis is a much, much greater priority than it is for me for Trae. And naturally, because of that decision, I'm getting much less Trae Young in my captain, MVP, FanDuel lineups, even on Yahoo, the superstar, megastar. I'm just getting more of Giannis than I'm getting Trae, just because the salary, there's enough value, I believe, to just get those surefire Giannis points. And I think there's more pathways for Trae to fail than there is for Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, on DraftKings specifically, just crunching a bunch of lineups here, Giannis completely dominating the captain spot. The only other guy I'm getting to on that captain spot, which I guess technically you could justify as a stud based on his contract or his price, even though he's really lower than that, would be Capella. I mean, everybody else from the captain stamp. Now, again, we'll talk about punts and we'll talk about super low cost ways in which you can manipulate the lineup tonight, especially from a lower variable standpoint. But it's Giannis, and then a couple of sprinkles of Capella up there. Are you surprised at that?
No, I'm not surprised by that whatsoever. I do think the Giannis captain is going to be the most popular captain, and rightfully so. I think the recency bias and casuals, we might get a little elevated Trae Young captain ownership just because of how well he's been playing, and just basing off our data that we're providing, Giannis just seems like a much, much better captain play. And even on our ownership projections, which are free, indicate that as well. So it's Giannis for me. And then Capella and Trae Young are close for me in terms of ownership. But yeah, Capella does grade out as the top Hawk captain play if you were to look at that as well. And now if you're building if you're entering large field tournaments, I don't mind taking your chances on a guy like Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday was absolutely sensational last time out. And Chris Middleton is someone who's going to be a contrarian captain option. We've seen an upside within him. And he is not going to go 0 for 9 for 3 again. I think that's going to turn around. And the DraftKings 3-point bonus for him is going to be favorable. So I like taking some chances on large field tournaments. And it's okay to spend down on captain. And sometimes they'll free up an extra stud if the low price value fails, which can definitely happen. So it's a unique way to get different on these large field tournaments, especially on DraftKings captain mode.
Yeah, so that's a good point to raise, right? Because I think people will have in their minds where you have the clear, obvious Trae, you have the obvious Giannis in there. You mentioned safe picks as far as studs up there at captain. And then clearly from a cost standpoint, it's going to be Middleton and Holiday. But the contrarian, be it from ownership or just maybe from the person who doesn't expect the bounce back that I think you, myself, and a lot of people here on the chat are for Middleton, would look at Chris Holiday as, that third option. We talked about Clint Capella as well. Is there anybody, I mean, look, you're going to pay a lot of money for John Collins as the captain, but I feel like there's a pretty big risk with that where it's very narrow, and I don't see a path that John Collins gets to 20, 22 points tonight.
Yeah, John Collins, obviously 11 to 16 from the field. He had a monster rebound performance as well. Collins is overpriced for me on DraftKings. I am coming in under the field on quite a bit on him, and I think the field is also not going to be going there as much. I think Collins on our sponsor site, I think grades out as a fine option if you want to play him over there on Yahoo. Coming in at $21, I think that's a fine value option to consider over there. I think that's a low enough price. Well, looking at DraftKings and FanDuel, I think Collins becomes a little tough of an option. I don't think he is priced a little too expensive for my liking. And something I talked about heading into game one is Collins in the Giannis matchup. Collins did an excellent job avoiding foul trouble. There has to be a game where Collins gets in foul trouble going up against Giannis. It's just going to happen. And Collins, he has improved that in his young career. He was a terrible, terrible person to keeping his hands to himself. Now he's gotten much better, as we can see that. So that's a risk factor for me that I do consider in these one game slates. Just it's never easy to predict foul trouble, but you got to keep in mind the matchups and what are the pathways a person can fail and at a certain salary. That's one of them. One of the things I'm looking at with Collins.
Yeah, Collins right now, just looking at his ownership, you mentioned as far as across the board, DraftKings at 26%, and then FanDuel, it's going to change a little bit depending on right lineups and just under 20%, but not anywhere near that high, and the reward really not worth the risk when you're factoring him in, as you said, atop these lineups for any type of reward where you would slot them. So as you start to look, and not to get to that punt range, but we start to hit that mid-range spot for captains. And I know that Brook Lopez is going to jump out for a lot of people just because you can work him in. He's affordable. You can still work 2, if 3, if depending on how far down you want to throw a punt or 2 in there, 3 of these top guys alongside Lopez. So he's not factored in per se as this lower cost captain, but you can still get pretty good reward from him, especially if he's rebounding the ball tonight. He's going to get a couple of looks from 3 as well. So we do have that range now, right, Ryan, where it's like the Herder, it's Brook Lopez. It's kind of just below that stud range, and you can take advantage maybe from more of a contrarian from ownership standpoint, I think, than just trying to take advantage of working them in ISO as a captain.
Yeah. So Brook Lopez, someone I thought wouldn't get played off the court in this series as much as I thought he would get played off in the previous series. He stayed on the court in round 2, but he got played off the court last game out. They didn't play him more than 20 minutes, as we saw. I think he plays a tad bit more than 20 minutes, but I do think we're going to more likely see a Giannis at the 5 type of lineup situation if Brook Lopez keeps sagging off on those Trae Young floaters. I think it's going to come back to haunt Budenholzer in a way. So that's something I'm concerned about. But I think on a one game slate, after Brook Lopez burned a lot of people, going back to him is a fine option. You don't even have to come in with the field. I think if you're just coming a tad bit under, you can, I think, cover your ground with Brook Lopez like that. Now, if I'm building one lineup, does Brook Lopez try to fall in there? Tough to say that. I don't think so. And especially at that DraftKings price tag, uh, it's a bit tough for me to advocate for putting him in one lineup, coming in at $6,200. He will be a great tournament play. So at $6,200, we're looking about that range, like you mentioned. He's $600 more than Gallinari and $800 cheaper than Bogdanovic, who's injured. So he's kind of in an island price tag. Kind of just falls right in there at the 6.2 range in the utility spot on DraftKings. While over on FanDuel, I don't have much of Lopez. I have a very little bit amount. He's coming in at $11K. He's only $500 cheaper than Capella, who I prefer much more. And over there on Yahoo is, I think, where his pricing is okay, but he's only $2 cheaper than Collins, who Collins' minutes seem a lot safer in this series than I expected. So it's just tough to go there. And we just saw what the downside of Lopez is. But Lopez is one of those guys who can get hot from the outside, and Budenholzer rides the hot hand. He's going to be a great tournament play, which can pay off. So very, very high risk and very, very high reward type of play in Brolo.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a total pivot, as you mentioned on FanDuel, where clearly everybody is rolling with Capella just because why not when you're talking about a similar price here. So you're really just trying to get ahead of the field there in the hopes and event that, as you mentioned, Lopez can take advantage of some extra minutes. But other than that, it doesn't make sense, right? And Capella is coming in just under 50%, right? Pretty much at 50% ownership that we have projected on FanDuel. So it's not even like it's at 95% or something along the lines. That's still a pretty decent number that's workable, where, yeah, clearly there are some pivots at 11% to Lopez, but it's not like everybody is working with Capella as opposed to trying to insert there with Lopez. And I'm with you where it doesn't make sense to pay down $500 in order to get Capella, who, again, outside of foul trouble, is going to be out there. We know at the very least an opportunity to be out there way more than Lopez. So that makes sense, at least on the surface, and doesn't look like many people are jumping to Lopez on FanDuel from an ownership standpoint either. That makes sense, Ryan.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And it's just one game slates, and it's all comes down to your risk tolerance, opportunity cost, and a lot of things go into these plays. And it's tough to pinpoint who's going to get on fire, and you got to take those risks. And Lopez is one of those guys. I'm just going to circle back, very high risk and very high reward. His ownership also indicates that. I think people are going to shy away a little bit from Brook Lopez today. And it's just like, even if you go to Lopez at like the captain spot, it's going to be very, very unique. That's one thing that's important on a showdown. If you're trying to win solo, that has a lot of value to its own right. And but you're going to miss out on a huge game. If Giannis has a monster game, you're going to miss out on that 1-5 multiplier and point differential. And is there enough value to really cover that ground? It really depends who falls in your utility options, but it can be tough at times. It can be really tough to cover that ground in these multiplier scoring in these single game contests.
You mentioned the matchup with Giannis, especially him moving to the 5. I do want to get your thoughts on a different matchup, one that's going to impact everything from the top down with Atlanta. But as we mentioned, our show today brought to you by Yahoo, and we have something for you out there, everybody here, part of the Awesemo community. Yahoo Sports Daily Fantasy as a deal today for everybody, all users of Yahoo DFS. You'll get $30 worth of Yahoo Sports rewards points to be used in contests with any deposit of $5 or more. Just use our promo code. We have a code for you. As always, we have something for you to make it easier. Awesemo 30, the number 30. So Awesemo 30. That's Awesemo 30 when you deposit with Yahoo DFS tonight. Make sure to use everything that we have, our tools and projections here on Awesemo, for Yahoo to help take down any contest you enter, right? That's the whole point of this thing, is that we want to provide you with insight, like from Ryan here. We want to provide you tools like we have available to you. Tonight's free one for you is the Showdown single game ownership projections, what we've been referencing and what Chris has been putting up for you to see. We want you to take advantage of everything. It's all encompassing here. Everything works together. It's all part of the same machine so that you can win money, and then you could be part of the Hall of Fame, and you could say, yo, Rinpack, I saw you there, man, top 3, and there I was, top 2 or 1, whatever it may be. So we want you to take advantage of everything. The MLB player projections today, the MMA fighter rankings today. There's a lot of stuff here on the site. It's $29.95. We even have something for you as far as Awesemo Plus, where you can move up from the Awesemo Plus to the Awesemo Plus Platinum community. So even use our promo code NBA Live Before Lock. I know I'm probably driving Chris crazy right now, throwing everything possible. This is like one big promo here that I'm just gigantically gluing together here for Chris. But it all comes together. Again, you want to make sure that you have access to everything we have. Awesemo Plus and now Awesemo Plus Platinum, 25% off your first week. NBA Live Before Lock. That's our code. NBA Live Before Lock, so that you have everything in front of you when you're listening to Rayen break stuff down, right? I mean, it's that simple. There's a lot. Like, we have so much stuff on here that I feel like I could easily go down rabbit holes with all of the different ways that we can make people money, especially on sports that, I know I have no idea about, but I could blindly close my eyes, right? Follow some soccer, golf projections, and win some money.
Yeah, that's the whole goal of this. And circling back at our sponsor, Yahoo, it's the site that I'm a big fan of. I try to make sure to play there every night as I can. And it's a smaller site. Obviously, the prize pools are not as big as our other DFS providers, but it's a great site to build your bankroll, and using this deposit bonus is your first step there. And sometimes these contests are smaller, and in a single game contest, it's just organically, there's potentially going to be lesser dupes. You can get it'll pay off in being a little different at times. And it's it's a great site to play on, and definitely supporting your sponsors is really important for us and makes us feel better, but it can definitely make your bankroll feel better as well. So definitely take advantage of our sponsors.
Wanted to mention, as we start to look a little bit deeper at some punts and some low-cost captains, the MVP as well, and building it on Yahoo, of course, tonight. Just looking at one matchup and just trying to look at any adjustment that could possibly be made with Trae Young. And look, he doesn't have to score 40-some-odd points again tonight just for the Hawks to win. We've seen Atlanta win where he's been held relatively in check. But I do wonder, as far as what you're anticipating from Budenholzer and really any limitations that he'll have to get around, because this is now a young man who has run through some pretty good defenders so far in his playoff run, including one here, as we all saw in Philly, where a guy was too afraid to shoot, but he also wasn't able to lock Trae Young down either.
Yeah, I think he's run through the best of the best. Ben Simmons and Jrue Holiday back-to-back series. That's as tough as it gets in terms of being able to go up against. And he obviously showed out the Bucks defense in game 1. I honestly think what Budenholzer should do is, I'm not advocating a box and one, but we might need to see a box and one like what the Raptors did to Steph Curry. Just be like, hey, let Bogdanovich on one leg beat you. Can Kevin Huerter channel his inner game 7 again? That's what I think. You just want to get the ball out of their best player and have other players beat you. And I hope Budenholzer goes with that game plan. Not sure what he's going to do. He obviously has gone, in terms of his ability to coach, he has gotten worse over his career. He was a solid coach in Atlanta, and then he came to Milwaukee. He had one good year, and obviously Kawhi beat them. And then it's just gotten worse and worse. It's kind of shocking to see. You see when tenured coaches get better and better. Not so much with him. So yeah, in adjustments, we'll see what he does. I hope he can get the ball out of Trae Young's hand and proceed the other guys to beat him. That'd be what I would do if I was Budenholzer. Granted, he's the head coach. I'm just a guy just talking about basketball. So we'll see what the game plan ends up going. And that's the reason why I'm just a little bearish on Trae Young today. And it's why I'm just become Giannis is just that much more of a priority. And I just feel more confident in him to make that decision. And I think there's even a chance where I'm willing to take my chances of guys like Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton outscoring Trae Young. I just think Trae Young can disappoint like he did, 5 of 23 in game 7. We've seen downside games from Trae Young, and I just think there's ways where you can different, just like maybe, hey, Jrue Holiday has another great game and Trae Young doesn't. And that little difference can jump you in many, many lineups in these one-game slates.
Yeah, I think that opens up an interesting conversation with the matchup, the possible adjustment going up against Holiday, having help if it's multiple layers, sagging with Tucker, and anything at all they can get from just a body down low, kind of getting in front of Trae Young. But it does open up how deadly Trae Young could. And now, again, this is risk reward to where I think I'm total agreement with you where there's going to be some swing of the pendulum with Young where I don't see a 40-plus game from him tonight and some regression to his means, not the means, but what we've seen as far as but there's this variable where he could easily, and I don't flinch with this word, Ryan, he could easily drop 15, 16 dimes tonight with that plan in place where he does struggle from the field, shooting the basketball, getting to the line even, but all of a sudden becomes an insane facilitator. But again, I don't think that he's going to necessarily return a 70, 80 fantasy point night, which is going to frustrate people. That may limit him more to a 45, 50 point night. And it sounds like that's not worth the return based on what you're getting in the showdown slate for you, right?
For sure, for sure. And salary is also another factor. Giannis is only $600 more expensive in the utility option, and the captain option, it comes out to be, I believe it was $900. I'm doing the math. Yeah, it's $900 doing the math off the top of my head. So, and that's enough for me to be like, all right, I'm just going to go to Giannis more times than not. I have sprinkled in a few Trae Young lineups, not as much as the field. I'm coming a bit under on that, but even if I'm building one lineup in small field tournaments, I like going to Giannis. I just think Giannis, there's just so many pathways for him to succeed. He was 1 assist shy of a triple-double. He has been much more aggressive getting to the line. I know he's not the greatest free throw shooter. We know that, but that just it raises his floor quite a bit. And in these showdown contests, recency bias is elevated more than just your regular DFS contest because there's just one game. And I just think we're going to get elevated Trae Young recency bias ownership. So I just want to be a little under that today and hoping that he just doesn't have a good game. Fingers crossed he doesn't have a 50-point double-double. I said that in game one, and he showed me up. So I'm going to just go back to the well with me, hoping that Trae Young struggles today.
Fair enough. A couple of props we're going to get to before we get out of here, and one of them centers around Trae Young passing the ball. So I just wanted to wet our beaks a little bit with that, and we can come back for sure. Premium Slack up and running, super chat as well. You have any questions here specifically is really anything. I mean, from my kid to what I also see now in the premium Slack is Arculettle 22 asking if you have your big glass of booze for tonight's show. Is that a theme? Is that something, or is it just like preparation working with me? It could be any of the above, right?
I think I alluded to something on Wednesday's show that I might whip something out. Maybe towards the end of the show, as we wind down, I might go grab a glass of whiskey or something to cheer up the audience.
Yeah, look, if you need me to kill 20, 30, 50, 60 seconds, whatever it may be, for you to get a shot, a swig, a glass, a bottle, whatever it may be, a whiskey, brother, we're here for you. All right.
Yeah, we'll see if we let's make this a like count thing. We're only at 229 likes. There's 1,100 people watching, I believe. If we can get that like count up to a number, what should be the count, Eytan, to make this happen?
Well, here's the thing. I think we definitely need to set a number here for you to go out and grab the whiskey, come back, do a nice little toast on the air to whatever it is you may be. We'll also bring the baby picks back up and help fuel the likes with it. So we'll give you the grow lamp, if you will, to expedite the process. But yes, really the destination here is a number. And you said 1,100. I think honestly we can get to, well, I would say 800, 500. EMAC is in here now. A lot of people are using 500 as a number. So
if chat's saying 500, it's going to be 500.
500?
If chat says 500, it'll be 500 then.
All right, let's do it. 500.
All right.
Now, if we get to, it's 280, and Chris can pop, and counting, Chris can pop up the baby pick again, and we will shamelessly use my newborn child to fuel as many likes as we can. But really, the destination here is for Ryan to come get the whiskey and start chugging. A lot of people are willing to chug Four Loko alongside with you in the chat. I didn't realize that.
Four Loko is
still
not
that
my
popular.
drink of choice, but yeah.
That's fine. Look, I don't think you have to. If you're going to chug Four Loko, we better get that sucker up to 1,500 likes. All right. That's fair.
That sounds like a plan. But yeah, that is something wild. Wow. We're already up to 330 according to producer Chris. But
yeah, 337 and counting. Look at this. Okay. See?
All right. The likes keep going
I told you 500. We might have set our sights a little too low, brother.
Yeah. Chat knew something. They came into force. So, but I do think we should circle back on some cheaper rotational guys, the guys who really mixing in and matching your lineups, the guys who are inconsistent, the guys who have wider range of outcomes, guys like Kayvon Herter, like his teammates call him, Danilo Gallinari. On the Bucks side of things, it's Pat Connaughton, PJ Tucker, Bobby Portis. What do his minutes look like in a game too? Bryn Forbes, does he get more minutes run? Does Jeff Teague still stay in the rotation? And Solomon Hill, who is garnering a ton of ownership at 1K, at $1,000. Do we pivot to Solomon Hill and Onyeka Okongwu today? Onyeka Okongwu was very disappointing, as we saw. He doesn't need to be really on the court, as the Hawks can opt to go as a small. I really think I'm a little under the field on Solomon Hill. Just there's so many lineups you can make with that 1K player where it doesn't make sense just to be all the way up with the field. But point per dollar on a 1 game slate, does he map out pretty well? Yes. But it's Solomon Hill. He can play 25 minutes and he could score 0 fantasy points. It will not shock me. That's just the guy. That's who Solomon Hill is. He's out there for his defense. We saw him perform really well. He put up 10 points, which was the difference in like the optimal lineup the other night. I'm going to come in a little bit under, but I do think he's a good play. If you're playing cash games, I do think he falls in the optimal. That is fine. It's nothing that I'm going to go out of my way to roster. I want to see what the lineups look without him, just because the floor is so low. And if he puts up a 0, it's going to really eliminate your chance of coming in first. And there's some other players where you can mix and match your captain and pay up at the other situation. Like, for example, I think Pat Connaughton is someone who can play high 20s, low 30s minutes potentially. And he has shown in the past where he can be solid and he can outscore Solomon Hill maybe by 5-6 points. And that alone is the difference. So mixing and matching these cheaper players, guys like I mentioned, Ben Forbes, I think is a solid DraftKings player where you get the 3-point bonus can pan out for you. Lou Will is someone who can get going. Maybe he steals the Bogdanovich injured minutes. So this is where you had to mix and match using our ownership projections. And why I'm a little bearish on Solomon Hill, just because his floor is so low and there's other guys who can get buckets and their scoring plays out better for them.
You bring up a very unique situation tonight because he's the only guy that's playing through a serious injury, and that's Bogey. But there's also Lou Williams and how it's impacted. So it's kind of a trickle-down effect here. And first off, look, as far as Lou is concerned, even with Bogdanovich healthy, we've seen how a Lou Williams punt has paid off significantly from a 2-game slate to a captain slate where he's been in an optimal lineup. So Sweet Lou is going to perform with minutes out there, and he could easily cook on offense, and that's all you really need. And 2,200 as well is one of the most workable, on DraftKings at least, is one of the most workable lineups that we have, and he's even coming in under 30% owned, which is a little surprising to me because I get the reaction with Solomon Hill and even Bobby Portis with the expectation of getting minutes. But let's kind of start looking at it from a 2-tier process, right? Where Bogdanovich is a risk because we just don't know the injury, the extent of it. Not to say that he's not going to play, but just how much it's going to hamper, how much it's going to eat into his minutes. You know that Lou Williams was a decent to pretty good punt play, even with a healthy Bogey. So I don't necessarily, for me at least, and I always defer to you here, but for me at least, I don't think the injury necessarily would be a deterrent for me with Lou Williams. If anything, it would reinforce a continued play for Lou Williams. But as far as Bogey is concerned, I don't even know how you approach that tonight, Ryan, knowing that he could be out there playing through it, but we could see that significantly eat into his minutes.
Yeah, so let's look at the box score. So there was one game he plays 42 minutes in the Philly series, the game they win by 3 points. And then the next game, he only plays 21. And ever since that game, he's gone 3 of 9, 3 of 11, 2 of 8, 1 of 6. The shot attempts have gone down. Bogdanovich is not someone who's really aggressive going to the free throw line. The peripherals are really not there. He's a very volume scoring dependent fantasy player for us. And I just think at $7,000, it's still a little too expensive for me. He potentially 27 minutes might be the ceiling for him. And I just think there's a lot of risk with Bogdanovich. There's guys who are priced around him that I'm willing to spend up for. I think Kevin Huerter is only $200 more on DraftKings. You're just going to get so many more minutes from Huerter, and you feel more confident going there than Bogdanovich. So Bogdanovich, I'm way under the field on Bogdanovich today. If he comes out healthy and burns me, so be it. I just am going maybe recency bias is going to burn me, but I do think that injury is bothering him quite a bit. He's just not an effective peripheral fantasy player where he doesn't pick up any rebounds. Assists is not his thing. He's just very scoring volume dependent, and he's going to need to get to pay off that price tag on a 1 game slate. I think he needs to put up 25, 26 real life points, and I just don't see the pathway there with this lingering injury.
Man, a lot of people down. It's a little different on FanDuel, where he's close to 0.25% owned. But on DraftKings, just looking at the field, not much trust at all in Huerter. And maybe some of that is at 7,200, knowing that he is volatile and a lot requires him to get shots. He's not creating his own shot for 30 points by any means. And we've also seen him in foul trouble at times, depending on how teams take advantage of the matchup on defense. So it's not hard necessarily to be over the field when it comes to Huerter, but you did mention him, and he's not even at 12% owned. He's right there at the bottom as far as our ownership projections. Free, of course, tonight. Showdown single game for you across the board on Awesemo Plus, $29.95 a week. So you don't have to wait for a night like this, but he's really super low owned. So sneaking him in a couple of lineups, you're definitely going to get ahead of a lot of people tonight.
I think so too. And he's a solid value option on our sponsor Yahoo today. I believe comes in at $17. I just think he can play mid-30s minutes like he does. And if they're going to make sure Trae Young gets out of the offense, we're going to have to see Kevin Huerter take more shots than usual. So there's some pathways for him to